life after rugby, I've been quite vague. I get it, but I don't have the answer. It's my biggest fear, don't get me wrong. I'm not sitting here thinking it'll all work out. I've always been most fearful of life after rugby and having something to get up for in the morning and a reason to get up in the morning. And that drives me on to find it, to the point where I'm talking to a psychologist at the moment about it, to try and work out why that problem feels so big. Not what it is they're going to give me the answer as to what I'm going to go into, but why I get anxiety and fear and worry about life after rugby. And everyone always says, oh, you'll be fine. It's my worry, it's my fear, and it's me who wants to be a success.
Alex Goode, professional record-breaking rugby player. Alex has been part of numerous English Premiership championships, won 3 European Cups, been named European Player of the Year, and won 21 England caps.
First question, like I said, is exploring how you get to where you want to be, and is there any obvious screw it, just do it moment?
I think deep down, yes.
Okay.
Quite hard to look back 20 years or so. Always wanted to play sport, loved rugby the most, and ultimately I always believe whatever you have a passion in, you're going to be the best at it. You don't see it as hard work. I remember for me, I loved football, probably better at football than I was at rugby when I was younger and other sports, but I had a passion for rugby. I was willing to go out and kick rugby balls and pass rugby balls, in the morning, in the evening, whenever, because it wasn't like, oh, I've got to do that. It was, I love doing it. And the same thing, if you're into art, music, drama, whatever it is, when you have a passion for something, you just will put all your effort in, and you're very, very likely to be a success at that, I think. More successful in that than anything else.
And were you more passionate about rugby than football, or was it 50-50 at a certain age? Or
I think I was passionate about sport, and I love competing, and I still am incredibly competitive. And I just think when it's football, I just love trying to win and trying to beat other people. But I always look back a bit, and it's like different. I never missed a rugby game, but there were football games I did sometimes miss. So quite often I'd go rugby, then football straight away. And I guess, a lot of my teammates, it meant everything to them for these big games, and their parents, grandparents, aunt, uncle, sister, brother would all be watching on the sideline and have their Lucozade support for the game, the bananas. They'd be doing their warm-up. And I'd just get flung out of the car by my mum, muddy knees, getting changed in the back of the car, run over there, barely do a warm-up and just go and play. Yeah. And I was, being arrogant, I was a good player, and I would then excel and do well, but I would then leave, go home and not think about it. I think rugby, I probably thought about it a bit more. As I said, I was willing to put more practice and time into it. But it's just difficult because at a younger age, football, particularly in other sports, you can kind of measure yourself. There's sort of county things, there's clubs. For me, it was Ipswich Town or Cambridge United. There were lots of things to measure yourself against other players. With rugby, it was sort of my local rugby club, Cambridge, and it wasn't like a county or Eastern Counties sort of selection stuff until you're 15 or 16 years old. So you think you're okay, but you can play in different schools, but you don't really know outside the little bubble you're in. No. So it's quite hard to judge it on that. But I did know. I think I had a passion for rugby probably more, and that probably as well, again on reflection, why I've had longevity in the game, because I do love the sport. I love being there. I love competing. Even training. When it's not too cold or wet or windy. Rare in England, but I can keep doing it at an old age because I have that love for the game.
Yeah. And what steps did you do? Did you go straight from school to academy, professional? Yeah,
I went. I wasn't in the academy before, which is quite rare nowadays. But I left school at 18, did my A-levels, and then I think after my leavers, do whatever, or a couple of days after the last day, I was straight into pre-season at Saracens.
Really?
Living in an academy house with 3 other guys and learning, with I remember, never forget it, I had a piece of paper which had scrambled egg, omelette, pasta and chicken, and carbonara or something like that. they're my 4 staple recipes for basically a year nearly.
Did your mum teach you those or anything like
She
that?
didn't teach, she just wrote them down. I had to learn when I got there. And, you know, it was a huge learning curve. And I know that I was very lucky that I had a probably 2-year academy contract, because the first year I wasn't professional enough. I didn't understand what it took to be a professional. I wasn't good enough. I probably thought I'd done England under 18s, I'm pretty talented and pretty good. You soon realise that every player in professional rugby has done England 18s, under 20s and stuff like that. It's not that impressive. And while the senior players seem like they're not working hard, they put in the hard yards to get to where they are, and you have to work a lot harder as an academy player to get to their level. And I wasn't doing that. I was playing on loan at Cambridge Rugby Club. I was going back and seeing my mates most weekends. I hadn't immersed myself in professional rugby, being a professional at all, really. And the penny probably dropped a bit, probably the back end of that year, maybe the start of the next season. I was like, okay, I went away and trained really hard in the off season, really worked hard, physically grew into my body a bit, got a bit stronger. And I was in with the first team straight away and did a full pre-season with them and started to live up to some of my promise, because I was more professional. I was, I said, training harder, doing extras much more after training, like working with the first team players all the time. So you're naturally playing with better players, you upskill. And it's sort of the penny had dropped that I have to work pretty hard here and get better, otherwise this chance is going to leave me. So yeah, it wasn't all plain sailing, that's for sure. And certainly I wasn't first choice at England under 18s, and I'll never forget that, and that drove me on. I was 3rd or 4th choice under 16s. I was even under 19s. I played fullback, not by half. I always think those kind of memories of not being first choice, we had a good sort of chip on my shoulder. Always wanted to prove people wrong. Because I felt I should have been, and my skill set was underrated, and I don't know whether I used that as motivation or I just had it. It's always something that's probably put me in a good place to work a bit harder, to prove people wrong, and showcase that I was very good, basically.
And was there anybody like at the club as you came through who you kind of looked up to and saw the difference in how they were training, how they were looking after themselves?
Yeah, really. I was very lucky. I had Richie Hill was at the club. Now, Saracens, when I first got there, was quite I say failing organisation. I can say that now. It wasn't a good organisation. They hadn't won anything. They were close to relegation. The year I arrived, they were a point away from being relegated. They had all these superstars, yet they never won anything. And I realise now, looking at it, it was little cliques here, and no one worked hard for each other. There was no togetherness. There was no fight. They'd play well for the odd home game, but away from home, they were poor. And actually, it was an average squad. Lots of talent, but they had no fight, no togetherness, a soft underbelly. And what part of that was no one was really pushing to be much better, and I say that with not to be nasty to those players, but I don't know how ambitious they were. But the one person who stood out for me, who was part of the England setup at the time under Clive Woodward, who was pushing every single part of recovery, training, nutrition, professionalism, that was Richard Hill.
Right.
And I can't really remember how it happened, but he was sort of still playing, but going into sort of his last year or so, and he wanted to go into a bit of coaching, but not full-time coaching. So he started doing some mentoring, and whether he chose me and I sort of latched onto that. We didn't play the same position at all, but he was invaluable to me, particularly just around good habits, professionalism, how you conduct yourself, just small things like, he wouldn't tell me how I should kick the ball or how I should run the ball back or do that, but he would say, here, were you in the right position beforehand? Did you work hard enough to give yourself the best chance? When you got to this breakdown, could you have done this? In terms of preparation for the game, what could you do? Communication to other players. Instead of you saying, get round the corner, use individual names. You know, I can still remember exactly where he said that. It was such an easy point, but so powerful for me to go, Loz, get round the corner, as opposed to, get around the corner. No one, you know, give individual names to people.
Yeah.
It was really powerful as a 19-year-old trying to organise games as a fly half. So he was brilliant for me, and certainly my game went up like that. I did England 20s that year. Had a really good year as a fly half. Organising that, we got to the World Cup final, unfortunately lost, but it was a lot of my growth was hugely helped by him.
It's interesting, isn't it? And you look at the kind of cycles of success that different clubs have gone through, and believe it or not, I was at Bath, and we're going back in the 90s, and never got to first team stage. But when I was there, it was Andy Robinson was the 7, John Hall was the 6, Ben Clark was the 8, then you got Steve Ajomo, who just come through, and his son's like playing for Bath, but like trying to actually break into that back row was just like nigh on impossible. But just being at training, you know, throughout the week and seeing how those guys train, it was like Richard Hill was like, you know, the scrum half, you got Jeremy Guscott, people like just being surrounded by that, and then being taken out as like one of the youngsters there at like 18 years old, but taken out after a game for a curry, like with the guys and something was unbelievable, like education. So it's interesting you saying that.
Yeah, I think, yeah, again, fate, or however you look at it, Richard Hill maybe saw something, I don't know, he seems to tell me since he saw something in me.
Really?
And he thought maybe it needed a bit of refining or certainly some nurturing, and I wasn't lost on me as to how good a player he was, how successful he was, and was just wide-eyed, and you know, every time I could, I'd get the clips up and go with him and show him, and he would help, and listen to what he said, and the fact that you know, I can still remember those conversations now. It says a lot about the respect I had for him and how good the points were.
Yeah.
It's not to say there weren't other people who were really helpful in different ways, but I think at that kind of pivotal point where I was learning to be a bit more mature, learning what it took, as I said, to be a professional, because I wasn't professional enough and I would have never made it really. I think it had a really profound effect on me at that age, and I'm very grateful for that.
And at the time, were you ever worried that you might fail, that you might not make the grade? You have those thoughts when you're that age, 18, 19?
Yeah, I think self-doubt is in there throughout, really, and not just at that age, even now, before you. There are times you question it throughout. I think, especially that first year, you come in and then you realise, like, geez, I can't do this, and like I'm not really standing out at National 2 level, and then this is going to be quite hard. But it's amazing when you put a little bit more effort, a bit more time into it. You sort of start working on your craft a lot more, really. That, you know, how much your game can improve and how quickly. And credit to Eddie Jones as well. In the third year, so 2 years, he came in and I thought, you know, he signed me and said, you know, I was a big part of the future, and you know, he made me, you know, pretty much I was out there first and coming in last, training the house down. You know, was pretty much the fittest, was, you know, the strongest I'd ever been before that. I was doing more kicking, more passing, more tackling, more everything to try and get a chance. And I didn't get a shot for the first 3 or 4 months. And I was, you know, at the time I was like, what's the point of doing this? I know it was a really good lesson, because I then did get a shot and I didn't get dropped the rest of the year. And I think the message for me there, I took from it, was you do all that work, you upskill yourself. So when a game comes, you've got it in the bank, and you don't have to think about it. You've got those skills, so you can just play rugby, and you've prepared yourself so much that you get that chance and you grab it and you don't let go. And I think it was a really good lesson for me. I'm not doing that to try and impress Eddie Jones or the other coaches. I'm doing that for my own benefit. So when as I say, I get a chance, that you know, I can cruise through that, and that I'm ready for it, and I can take it. So it was a great lesson for me, actually, and one that I hadn't appreciated at the time. I was getting frustrated, but actually looking back, it resonated with me quite a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just reading. So I'm training for London Marathon at the moment, and I did New York Marathon back in November. And I read David Goggins's book, and in it he talks about like a cookie jar. Whereas when you've done something, you put it in the jar, and it's like tapping into that memory that, you know, when things are tough and you're thinking, how the fuck am I going to do this? You can literally go, I've done this before. It's here, and like bring out and go, boom, there you go.
You repped it so many times. It becomes, you know, sort of natural, and you know, you do it without even thinking.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was interesting at the time. I was thinking, what am I doing this for? But as I said, the chance came, and those skills became second nature, and are so important, and they still are to this day. And you know, I still work on them incredibly hard, because you know, you have to. It's not a skill you do once. So you say the cookie jar, and you just leave it there for 10 years. You have to keep doing it, and keep doing it. And yeah, it was a great lesson.
And you mentioned Eddie Jones there. What were your thoughts when you heard that he'd lost the England job?
I was quite surprised. I think surprised they did that this close to the World Cup. Didn't really understand what the difference was between after the Six Nations in 2022, when England hadn't done very well, and they'd done a review and said no, he's going to keep it. I'm not sure what had changed then to the end of the autumn, really, because he wins in Australia and then goes back and he has, you know, a couple of bad results, and then it's like he's gone. So I was surprised, but at the same time, I did think Borthwick was the right man to come in if Eddie is to go, and you know, I think he'll do a great job. It's a tough ask with the amount of time he has leading into the World Cup. Yeah, but I think he'll do a good job. So yeah, I think there was a couple of comments, like everything in that scenario. I was like, they probably aren't going to get rid of Eddie, and then you start seeing things from people who are close to Eddie's camp, things being leaked, and you go, hang on a minute, maybe this is going to happen. And Eddie's not stupid at all. He's a shrewd man, and maybe he wanted that to happen towards the end. I don't know, because he's certainly had clearly lined up or back channeled things with Australia to give himself a chance to go there, and he'll be very good in that role as well. So, you know, credit to him. He's probably got an outcome that he's happy with. The English media, as we know, are particularly hard and difficult to please, and if you get on the back foot with them, then it's sometimes hard to change that momentum. Yeah,
and like you say, really close to the World Cup, but then you get Wales doing the same, and then Australia doing the same, and it's like, wow, like, you know, tier one nations doing that.
Yeah, I mean, the Wales. I mean, the Wales one, I guess, was coming a bit like some bad results and tricky. I don't know Wayne Pivac. I don't know what was going on there, so I can't comment too much on that.
No.
But obviously, when they sound out Gatland, he's the one they believe in hugely, and has got a proven track record and an exceptional record. I think with Australia as well, it's quite opportunistic. I think they would have kept Dave Rennie to the World Cup, but you know, thinking Eddie was available and knowing what he can do in a short space of time with talent, you know, they probably thought it's worth taking that punt.
And Eddie was the one who signed you for Saracens. What was your relationship like with him through the years? Is it like up and down like every relationship?
It's quite funny, really, because people are quite surprised by that. Eddie gave me my first shot, really, as the professional, played me week in, week out. He then unfortunately lost his job in Jan or Feb that year, but he played me a lot. He backed me. He demanded a lot from me, was tough on me, as he is for a lot of people, but I responded to that pretty well, really, and thought the fact that he's putting that much time into me is probably a good thing, even though it was hard and demanded a lot, as I said. But yeah, he didn't last too long at Saracens, but he had a profound effect. He gave me a shot, and I'm always grateful for that, really. Our relationship at that point was pretty good. Obviously, when he came to England, I was optimistic when he got the job, to be honest. Very wrong on that one. I thought, oh, I know really, that could be quite good for me. And that turned out it wasn't really, and ultimately it comes down to one man's opinion now.
Yeah.
You know, he did a great job with England, and you know, unfortunately I didn't get much of a shot, and that's disappointing, but I try not to dwell on it too much. I'm sure when I retire I'll probably feel a bit more aggrieved maybe and annoyed about it, but you know, here and now, you know, I put all my effort and time into Saracens.
So Alex, I'd like to ask you a question from a former teammate, Mr. George Cruz, who said, ask Alex why he wouldn't leave my house for 3 days dressed in full Saracens kit, and why every year he posts my house address on Twitter saying there's a house party to the point that people are turning up at my house with full crates of beer.
Yeah, it's a true story for once. George has not lied for once there. I would say every year, there's been a few years that I have posted his dress. George is someone who loves to stitch people up, like loves to wind up the whole time. I don't know why, but when me and Chris Ashton, me and McAvoy Pola get together, like, and a lot of other boys, like, he makes enemies, George. And there's a lot of boys who sort of are very eager to get him back after we've sort of won a trophy or the end of the season. And there's been a few times when I may have posted his address. Famously, on the third day of my bum bag full kit kind of piss up, which I'm a lot more famous for than rugby.
There's a lot of that online, by the way.
Yeah, it's amazing. You have sort of 17 years of rugby, 20 caps for England, behind cups, but no one really cares. They just love the fact that you get pissed in a bum bag. I mean, how British? You're more famous for being an alcoholic than a rugby player. But yeah, including that day where I managed to get some of the team over to George's. I was staying at George's house. Hadn't quite made it home, and George went to a physio, and I texted a few lads saying, why don't you come over and have a house party at George's? So and then it got on the group, and then George gets home and goes, hang on a minute, what's this about? As we're all drinking beers in his living room with his cleaner, who hadn't done any work. And then next thing we know, we're in there for the day, and we posted address a few times, and very sad on this one, but we went to the pub at about 4 o'clock, the little crawl, as you do on the third day. And sadly, at about 4:30, 4:45, 2 lads turned up with a crate of beer, knocked on the door, and George's housemate was there. He wasn't a rugby player. And he was like, can I help you? And they're like, we're here for the house party, that's good. And he was like, I'm actually quite sorry for you, but he left about half an hour ago. And I would have welcomed them in with open arms, never got their names. I think it would be a great story. A few people joining us. So, yeah, George used to get quite upset, threatened to, if he got burgled or anything got robbed, I'd have to pay for anything that got robbed when he was away and all that stuff. He got quite upset about it, very sensitive. And clearly he's not let it go, even though that was in 2019. So,
he is.
Yeah, he probably needs to get over it. Yeah.
It's interesting because everybody that I've mentioned that your upcoming guest on the show is a great player. Ask him about 3 days.
Honestly, it's one of those perfect storms. I hadn't planned it or thought about it. I didn't even post anything on social media. It's just all the boys putting stuff up. So It wasn't like I was self-publicising myself. I just want to be quite clear on that. But I guess it was that perfect storm of you win the European Cup, you don't really get insight probably into what the players are up to much, and then I'd been named European Player of the Year, and I guess seeing the European Player of the Year in his kit with a fanny pack, his gumshoe in his pocket, in his boots 3 days later with a Guinness in hand is people are like, oh yeah, he's really going for it still. And yeah, people were a bit shocked really. And certainly for me, when I woke up on Tuesday morning, I'd run out of battery I think Monday night, and I wasn't checking it. I woke up on Tuesday morning and charged my phone, and my phone was kicking off, and I'm gone, what the hell have I done? This isn't good. Automatically thought the worst of myself. Thought I'd done something bad here. And then I had to sort of go through a few of them, and it was all very positive. So, can anyone let me know if Alex Goode's still alive, or how good, is Alex Goode still going? Can we get some report? And I was like, okay, it seems to be positive. And yeah, my girlfriend at the time works in the music industry. She thought I was a bit cool after that. I think she thought I was a bit square before that, maybe. And she was like, oh yeah, he likes to drink. Fair enough. He's a bit more about him.
Personality.
Yeah, no, she was not a boring rugby player or something like that. I was like, oh, thanks.
Oh,
yeah, help me out there.
That's funny. And like George, you played out in Japan for a while with Saracens, Saracens win the championship. He comes back and he retires. Were you surprised he retired when he did?
Yes and no. I mean, he achieved everything he wanted to achieve. I know that it's quite hard, I think, especially for forwards when you go out to Japan, a lot of running, quite hard. You can't keep that body sort of mass. The physicality of the European game is quite hard to go back to, I think. And also, where was his motivation at the time? He'd had a great time in Japan, he'd won, he'd enjoyed it, and I think he was ready to move to his next chapter. So although he had probably some incredible offers, I think he was just like, my motivation isn't there. And he had prepared himself for that next step. And with 4 or 5, he had a brilliant, exciting company to get involved with. And I know that his partner Dom Day had been sort of probably I don't know this bit, but doing a lot, working full time in the company, and George probably felt, it's my turn to really get stuck in, and it's exciting, and if not now, when? And again, this is all me sort of guessing. He could have kept playing. He's a brilliant player, very in demand, but he sort of made that move and making a huge success of it. So credit to him.
Yeah. And with the recent collapses we've seen with like Wasps and Worcester, Welsh players threatening to strike, how much thought do you give to life after the game, or life still in the game, if that's something that you've entertained as well?
I think all those things, you always a little bit, I always sort of cherish the time I've had. You never know when it can end through injury or something like that. So you have to appreciate the time you have had out there and the memories that I've got, and I'm extremely lucky. While people say, are you not annoyed you haven't played more for England? Well, of course you'd love to do that, but I've had a lot from this game. I've been, from winning medals to trips away as a team. Some of the best times of my life have been with my teammates on a ski slope or in Miami or in Cape Town. Those opportunities aren't happening if I'm working as a dustbin man, probably. No. But yeah, those are incredible memories, and ones that will stay with me for the rest of my life. So in that regard, just cherish what I have had, really, and still doing. Whether it was because of Worcester and everything else going on, it doesn't change the fact that you can't beat Father Time, and I'm getting older and older, and there aren't too many older players at my age playing. I know I played a backline that was pretty old the other day, but to be still playing at a top club like Saracens, competing in Europe and in the Premiership, and the highest level, it is tough and it's intense, and hopefully I can keep doing that and enjoying it. But that won't last forever, I guess.
And what interests do you have outside of the game, if you get the time to do stuff?
I had more time before I had a son, probably. No, I think for me, just got it all wrong now. You've ruined it. Outside rugby, I've always been pretty active, from being an ambassador for 2 charities, or trustee on 1 charity, ambassador for the other, Matt Hampson, and Brick by Brick, which is a charity that builds schools and provides teachers in Malawi, which my mum set up. So very active with those. Also, always been involved in property. Yeah. So renting out properties, development there, which always keep me busy. And businesses, little businesses here and there, which there's no point mentioning here, but always been pretty active and involved in keeping myself busy. I'm not very good at sort of sitting still. So I like to stay involved with different things, get your mind going. I've got my degree, and so yeah, I'm still working out what my life after rugby choices will be, but I've luckily kept myself busy enough that there's little things here and there that I can get my teeth into at the moment and try and work towards. One of those maybe being a longer term project in the long run. So I don't know what that is, and it's always been life after rugby. I've been quite vague there. I get it, but I don't have the answer, and it's my biggest fear. Don't get me wrong. I'm not sitting here thinking it'll all work out. I've always been most fearful of life after rugby and having something to get up for in the morning and a reason to get up in the morning, and that drives me on to find it, and to the point where I'm talking to a psychologist at the moment about it, or a psychiatrist, whichever way you look at it, to try and work out why that problem feels so big. Not what it is they're going to give me the answer as to what I'm going to go into, but why I get anxiety and fear and worry about life after rugby. And everyone always says, "Oh, you'll be fine." But it's my worry, it's my fear, and it's me who wants to, be a success. And part of the probably downside of being relatively successful at rugby is that you're competitive and you want to do well, and you want to be successful at everything you do. And it isn't quite as easy as that, but you put pressure on yourself. And I said this to my fiance. I was like, she can tell me, or people can tell me, you don't have to worry, it'll work itself out, or there's no pressure from us. But naturally, I put pressure on myself to be successful, because it's the same what I do in rugby. I put pressure on myself to do well because I want to do well. I don't want to let anyone down or be rubbish. And that's the same in everything we do. You can't change. You can't switch that off one day. So that's just how I look at it. And hopefully that will help me make the problem slightly smaller and work towards things. And in the meantime, for anxiety, this little doggy is fantastic for that. So
I've also heard of this CBD company. You can say it's this.
I haven't. Yeah, but one, it'd be lovely to get any freebie from them. Would be lovely, but I haven't gone down the CBD route. Maybe I probably should, but I don't really trust what George puts in there. No, I'm joking. Their products are actually phenomenal, and I've taken a humongous amount of multivit, probiotics, fish oils, a lot. And I'm still playing. If that's not a sign, because turns out all I'm working on is Guinness, a bum bag, and then 4 or 5 tablets. So that's the recipe there. I should be the face of their product now.
And what did your fiance say to you when you do have these worries about life after rugby?
She's amazing, Lucy. She's part of the biggest support she gives me is just to be able to talk about it, really. I think as you get older, a lot of probably my ways would keep a lot in for myself and not worry other people about stuff. I don't want to make it a big issue for you. But actually with her, we're very good at sort of hopefully talking about this or that, or this worry or that worry. And I find it a huge help. And she can't give me the answer. No. But she can be there and support me and help and be as helpful as she can be. And she understands it much more now. It's quite hard for professional players to go from something you do and institutionalised and doing for, in my case, by the time I finish maybe 20 years, to then reinvent yourself. And of course, everyone else goes, that's really exciting. And it can be when you get to that stage, but there's, as I said, I think before this interview, there's maybe 2 or 3 jobs or 18 months or 2 years of working things out and going through some quite tough times and not being around your best mates in the change room and doing what you love forever, and trying to find that exciting route. And that's quite tough. And there's an ego to that as well of being someone known as something and being good at that, to then not being that at all. And there's challenges all around, really. So that's the kind of way of, that's what you try and navigate.
And is it something that's talked about amongst teammates, or is that very different because you've got people at such opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to careers?
A bit of it's like it's a thing you don't say, you don't really ask, really, in rugby. Some people, they've got a business and it's like, oh, you're going to do that when you're done. But not until you really get to that last bit and you say, right, I'm going to retire. People go, oh, what are you going to do then? But no one's... Yeah. No, I think any of my teams really asked me, what are you going to do after rugby? And I'm obviously quite busy, so I think a lot of them assume I'll be all right, which is the worst thing. Put more pressure on myself. But I think in rugby you don't tend to ask people about it because you know deep down, if you don't know, like if you're a teammate and you're like, I don't know what to do after rugby, I'm not going to ask him what he's doing because it might put him in a difficult spot. I don't know. So it's quite a difficult one, really. And maybe other people have the same fear and the same worries as well. Because ultimately, you're doing your hobby for a living. Like nearly all people in rugby start out because they love rugby. Yeah, they get to do it as a job, and of course there are bits they don't love, like every job. But it's pretty amazing when you go out there and you play in a Premiership final in front of 85,000 people. You play for your country in front of 85,000 people. You're never going to replicate that in a job. So one, you got to not try and do that, and two, finding something that gives you stimulation of some kind is that challenge.
And I think it's exciting to think about what the next chapter could be, because traditionally, going back however many years, people had one career, whether you become a policeman, a doctor, a lawyer, all things that friends of mine have done, and that's it. Whereas these days, it's far more accepted to reinvent yourself. Like, I've done myself a number of times, whereas my brother's been a lawyer, his entire life, and friends who are policemen done it their entire lives, and now they're just like that. I hate my job. But I'm now like 50 something. Yeah. What am I going to do now? But you just think you're also a long time retired. And I know I blew my knee out when I was 30. And it's funny, the thing I miss the most isn't necessarily the games, not that I remotely played at a standard you did, but is the camaraderie of just being in the dressing room, like before and after games. And at the time, I decided not to come back from that. For whatever, I just met my girlfriend, now wife, mother of my kids, and it's just that time I was playing for 2 teams a week, training all the time, and I was really passionate about it. But just at that time in your life, when you're at that certain age, it was like, I let that go. And then a couple of years go by and you're like, I really miss that. And then it's like, can't be asked. I tried to get into touch rugby, and that was not remotely similar to me.
It's hard, and you get such contrasting advice because there's so many people who go, play as long as you can. I say what, you're a long time retired. Yeah. And you hear that, but I think you'll know, like for me, when I just can't have any influence in a game, or everything is a struggle from training to games to, and you've got no motivation to go in there and do your weights or to do your rehab or to do, to stretch, to get ready, and you're like, just coasting along, really. And I'll never be able to do that at Saracens. So as soon as I get to that point where I'm like, no, I can't do that. That spark or that competitive nature of me in the games or in training isn't there, I'll know to go, my time's up. Like, I'm not going to hang around and just hold pads and, sit in the physio bed. I'm either involved or I'm not here. So... And that's the decision and the mindset I have to keep looking at and checking in on and see where I'm at.
And what do you put longevity down to? Because you say there's not many other players, playing past the age you're at, and you'll see like an Alan Wynne-Jones, who I think is like 37 coming up to 38 and playing in a hard position. And then you look at, I'm super passionate American football fan, and you look at a Tom Brady, and they're like clearly an alien, because how could you keep playing a contact sport when you're and getting hit when a lot of the time you're unprotected?
Well, Tom Brady, the game has changed in the NFL. He's not getting hit too much these days.
No, the way they protect the quarterback.
But for him to be so mentally sharp is so impressive. Now, I haven't been having avocado ice cream like him or anything else, but no, I think obviously medical science has helped a lot of players, because there are people like Chris Ashton, Richard Wigglesworth, played older.
Yeah.
It tends to be people who probably, Alan Wynne-Jones is define logic, really. I mean, to be in that kind of contact zone and keep going, and even the mental strength to come back from shoulder surgeries and this again and again, like, he must love it, and fair play to him. I think, what do I put it down to? Well, running away and kicking the ball a lot before anyone tackles me is helpful. Avoiding contact, which sounds like I'm a chicken, or very smart. Yeah. Like, the game of rugby is evasive, run into space. Why run at someone like a Vunipola who's massive and going to eat me alive, when I can run to the side of them and have a fighting chance?
Yeah.
Think about it that way. But yeah, I think I do love the game. So mentally, I love training. I love competing. I love coming at pre-season and trying to be the fittest every year still. And that drives me on to still be that. And then, probably contrary to my drinking antics, I do try and look after myself quite well. And I'm not saying I'm a monk and the most professional, but there's a reason why I've probably played 350 games. I have looked after myself relatively well. I train hard and love being out there, really. And if you've got that passion, as I go back to, then it does help.
And notice, like, you've obviously been captain many times, but the last couple of weeks you captain Sarries as well. Do you prepare any differently for that?
Probably not now. I think maybe 2 years ago, thought probably a bit more worry and just worries, really, and anxiety of making sure everyone's in the right place. And ultimately, whether I'm captain or not captain, you want everyone to play well and you want to help them do that. It's probably a limit. I probably stopped thinking, I can't control everything. So fundamentally, get your role right, you play well, and lead by that example, and that goes a long way to helping everyone else. And then keeping the messaging quite simple for people, really. I think when you try and be something you're not, or overcomplicate things, it never really works. So, but again, there's people at the club who are incredibly helpful in the team. I'm not the only one talking. There's plenty of people who talk, and there's probably no need for me to tell everyone to go run up there and smash into people on Wattbill when I'm playing fullback and dancing around the place. It's better if that comes from a Billy Vunipola or someone in the front line. So it's about being clear in my messaging of what I'm there to do and help. And as a leader, I'm there to help tactically and put us in the right places the whole time, while there are other people to lead physically.
And interested to know the mindset like when you go from your club, you play internationally, you come back, and then you end up with yourself like a Vinny Vunipola. You're no longer in the England setup, but you're playing for the club and you've got internationals going away. How does the mindset shift?
I don't think it shifts too much in that regard. It's the next cab on the rank, really. There's other guys who get an opportunity and they probably need a bit more nurturing, a bit more understanding. So, if there's a row of previously Vincent Koch, Jamie George, Maka Vunipola, you've got Nick Adikwe, Maro Toji. If they aren't putting their weight on, you can be a bit like, no, you've got to do more of that. But if a young prop or a young hooker in Theo Dan or something like that, they make mistakes. Like, don't worry, your intent was right. It's a small mistake. Don't worry, next one, just get the next one. So they need a bit more, like, get behind them. I'm not saying that's a very simple, hard and fast rule, but with the younger group, it's about making sure that their actions, like their intent and their work ethic and the fundamentals or the foundations, you want to call it, are there. Drop balls, miss passes, like, that's not because they're not trying. So there's no point berating them for that. It's about getting behind them, going, well, the right option was there, doing the right thing, it just didn't quite work, so don't worry about it, next job. And it's that kind of get behind them and them not to go, oh, I'm going to, not do anything now. I don't want the ball in case I drop it. I don't want to do a pass because I don't want to make a mistake. Or they go inside themselves. You want to keep bringing their intensity and how well they're doing and just help them along.
I think that's why Dan Biggar copped a load of flack for Wales when he berated Rio Dyer for flinging a pass at him, I think in the second international game. He copped a load of flack on that for doing that, and he was probably, rush of blood, didn't think about it in the moment, who he was addressing it to, but it's all a bit public, I suppose, isn't it? Really?
Well, it is, and a lot of time that person knows they've made a mistake. Really, and they feel great about it. If he does it 4 times in a row, you'd probably rightly be annoyed. But as I said, have they shown the intent to work hard, to bust a gut, to be physical, all the right intent, then you can work with that and nurture the other bits, and that's all you really ask.
And finish up, interested now, you kind of touched on, or mentioned a few times the success of Saracens.
I haven't. Yeah. I don't know about that, but someone else maybe in the room. George mentioned it. But where do you put that down to? Is there a certain DNA? And I remember, my experience is being at Bath and seeing them win everything every single year again back in the 90s, but they've struggled massively to replicate that success despite considerable investment, etc., and having a really good squad of players there this season and a new coach, etc. But yours has been ingrained for many, many years. But you've again, longevity of success at club level. But what do you kind of put those down to? Is there a couple of things? I think Brendan Venter and Edward Griffiths, when they first came in, revolutionised the side really, honestly, and changed everything. I don't know if there are any other coaches or else could have done that, because it took such a big overhaul. Like, it was a failing organisation, and they were brave enough to go, we're going to get rid of your best players. The highest paid best players, they got rid of them. We brought in journeymen, some workman-like players, some Division 1 players, and everyone was like, Saracens are going to be relegated, We went and won the first 10 games. It's stupid. And it was, that's sort of the ending of it. But what it was that Brendan Venter came in and just really sort of went deep into the fundamentals and the foundations and said, look, everyone gets paid money. No one is doing it really for the money, otherwise you'd be a banker or something like that. He tried to tap into something a bit deeper as to a reason for why you'll work harder than the opposition team, why you won't let your teammates down. And he basically fostered this huge work ethic, massive physicality, and a togetherness. And that first year, at the start, it wasn't pretty at all. We kicked the leather off it, and we just worked so hard, and we whacked people, and we shocked people, and we realised that actually, you can get, if you get 15 players going in the same direction, working incredibly hard for something, then that's very powerful. And that was a sort of change of, we want players who are going to work incredibly hard, as opposed to the ones who are incredibly talented, because we broke it down into effort error, skill error. A skill error is a drop pass, I sort of mentioned it before, bad kick, missed tackle, and Brendan said, that's on me as a coach. I need to upskill you as a player, help you in that. But if you don't work back quick enough, you don't get off the floor quick enough, you don't kick chase quick enough, you never play for my team. And he broke it down quite simple. If you work really, really hard, you'll play. If you don't, then... And actually, off the back of that, those hard-working players are probably the ones who are doing more extras to get better at passing, to get better at tackling, are great for the environment and great for the team, and everyone respects them hugely for their effort, and that's what we had. What made us really successful, though, was having those foundations and then having a core group of players who played a lot together, developed a lot together, and probably led the group more so than the coaches to an extent to that success. And you had people from myself, Brad Barrett, Owen Farrell, Richard Wigglesworth, Peter Vinopola, Maro George, Mako, Jamie George, who played so much rugby together, and a lot of those guys sort of led how our standards were, led what we wanted to be as a club, how we wanted to improve, and it's why we probably had that success over a sustained period, because we're guys who are never happy, judging ourselves on other teams. It's our standards and how can we improve each week. We won next year we want to win it again. We want to win the European Cup. And you keep building and building. And it's like a relentless intensity and thirst, and it's tough. But it's what's probably helped us out massively, and having those big leaders made us successful over such a long period.
And it's quite often that those successful organisations have taken the directive and absorbed it, but they take it on themselves, as you say. And whether it's a team or an organisation, you have key figures kind of driving that through to the rest of it, so everybody buys into it.
I think as well, it's often spoken about how it's team led and players want to take control and stuff like that. It's a lot harder than people realise. Like it means you've got to put time and effort into thinking about how we can get better, thinking about meetings, thinking about looking at videos, thinking about the whole group. Like, it's not as easy as going, players do, I think we should do this today and that. Like, you have to put time and effort and thought into that. And that's the bit people don't quite grasp, I think. They go, players let, it takes a group who know each other really well, cohesion being a huge part of that. So you can have those honest conversations, but two, you've got to put time and effort into it, and that makes a big difference.
Right, let's finish up. Little quick fire rounds. Best player you've ever played with?
This is too hard.
It's a difficult one.
I'm actually going to exclude anyone from Saracens on this.
Okay.
And say Thierry Dusatois, play with him in the Barbarians. He was an incredible player. Not necessarily when we played in the Barbarians, he was retiring then, but watching him, he was an incredible player.
And best player you played against?
Israel Folau. As a 15.
Really?
There were points where you couldn't defend him. Like crossfield kicks, running lines. For not a great Australian side, he was freakishly good.
And player who never lived up to their potential?
Horrible things to anyone.
I'm just going to what George named somebody who was at Saracens.
Did he?
Who was Welsh.
Oh, Gavin Henson.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a bit missed. I don't think he was as good as everyone said he was. I think he had a couple of good games. Everyone, he's the best centre ever, and I don't think he was. Yeah. I never saw that, but I don't think he lived up to potential. I don't know. It's a guy I went to school with called Nick Waller, who he never played because he had 3 knee operations, but I think he would have played at least England sevens, if not played Premiership rugby at a good level. So.
Funny enough, I was going to follow up. Was there anyone at school that you remember seeing, just thinking, wow, they're the most talented person in the world, and then literally nothing?
We played together from the age of 10 to 18, twice a week, trained 3 or 4 times a week, and we had a brilliant understanding, and he was an exceptional player. Him or someone like another guy from school called Eddie Brown, who was on the verge, would have played, he was in Eastern Counties, would have played London South East, would have started for England under 16s. He was that good. And he did his ACL and just before the trials for London South East, and he wasn't out of private school and like that. His physio eventually came through a year later, but he missed his shot, and then wasn't really able to get into England 18s like that because he wasn't at a good enough club or school to help nurture him, and he was an exceptional talent. He would have been very good. So those 2 players are the 2 I played with who really would have been the ones.
And most annoying player, I find it's usually a scrum half, but up to you.
Except in this phase, Chris Ashton. He's a knobhead. Quote me on that. And it says a lot about me because he's one of my good mates.
Right.
But he is annoying, yeah. Right little pigeon.
And bum bag or fanny pack?
Bum bag, because I think I'll probably get cancelled for saying fanny pack these days.
Alex Goode, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching this episode of Screw It, Just Do It. Let me know what you thought of it in the comments below this video, as this episode helped move you closer to where you want to be. All that I ask is that if you enjoyed this episode, and then it's moved you closer to getting to where you want to be, that you share this episode so that it helps one other person do just the same. Just ask yourself what small action will move you forward to get you from where you are, then screw it and just do it. Until next time.